Wait, you started a riot for coffee? Hi there, I'm Peyton Dixon of Historic Experience, and welcome to What the History, the last piece of chocolate which you swore was going to be lime jelly, but turned out to be the Coco's Revenge Truffle in the candy sampler box of history. Price gouging. It's been around as long as I can remember, so at least 29 years. But seriously, as long as there has been supply and demand, there's been some rude little jerk that has thought, hey, there's a lot of demand and a little less supply. I can totally raise my prices and make a bundle. And yes, there are 100 ways that shortages occur from legitimate causes. Giant worldwide illness, for example. There's also rumors of shortages that lead to runs on products that make actual shortages. Not to mention artificially created scarcity. We're making a limited run of only 3,000 items, so get yours today. You know how hard it was to find this John Adams bobblehead? I know. But yes, back in John Adams' day, real John Adams, not bobblehead John Adams. Doesn't shake his head no. Definitely not the real John Adams. Supply and demand was front and center. The colonies in America had been dealing with taxes on imported goods, which caused protests, including homespun, or the first rounds of Made in America. There was the whole East India Tea Company debacle, aka, you can have tea, but only this kind of tea, but we're making it cheaper for you. And teenage America's like, nuh-uh, you can't tell me what to do. I don't even want your stupid tea. And suddenly coffee gets real popular over here. And once the revolution's in full swing, in addition to, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness and all, there's something else that America wants to fight for. Shopping. Then as now, America likes their imports. Even with all the homespun in the world, no amount of Made in the USA tags could compete with American desires for fine Turkish textiles, fine Jamaican coffee, fine West Indian sugar. It was fine. And of course, a lot of these imported items are actually imported from other British colonies. And that's really who you want to be doing business with, the country that you're trying to break free from. In the meanwhile, shopkeepers are seeing their shelves emptier and their profits dwindling. And some of them take a page from the Snidely Whiplash School of Business. Now, for those of you born in the 2000s, that's this guy, who basically tried to get what he wanted by tying a woman to a log and aiming her toward a running saw blade to get the money he wanted. But then Dudley Do-Right came in and saved the day. So to unpack that metaphor, the shopkeeper is Snidely Whiplash, the customers are the woman, sweet no, and the saw blade is higher pricing. But in this case, Dudley Do-Right is also portrayed by the customer? And in many cases, the customers are the women. So in this case, Sweet Nell is her own Dudley Do-Right. Women in America, like, women in a lot of the world in the 18th century, don't have a lot of power. Power to vote, power to own property, power of the purse string. Thanks, men! But despite the patriarchy, women of the 18th century often have the power of the household! Yes, John Adams went off to Congress, fought for independence and loans, and to be mistaken for his cousin Samuel. But his wife, Abigail, who I couldn't even get a bobblehead for. She not only looked after the farm in John's absence, she also taught their children, she hired laborers, she collected the fees from John's law clients, and she became a small business entrepreneur when she had John find things like straight pins that were nowhere to be found in Massachusetts, and then she would sell them at a modest but respectable profit. Power. And like Abigail, sisters, they had an additional power against these Snidely Whiplashes of the world. Their power of protest! And that's when you started to see food riots of the Revolution. Well, not the smashed windows and people running amok in stores. Think more like the Dowager in the old films saying, "This simply won't do." According to the Constitutional Gazette, in August of 1776, the town of Fishkill, New York, had their own tea party. when an alderman, Jacobus Lefferts, sent himself a large quantity of tea from further south. According to the Gazette, he planned to, quote, make a prey of the friends of the United States by asking a most exorbitant price, unquote, for that same tea. A group of the town's women got together to face Lefferts on the subject at his store/house, marched into the store and told Lefferts, we're not going to pay for your high-priced tea. We're going to pay the continental price authorized by Congress. Because, yeah, for a while, Congress was pricing your groceries for you. Lefferts was like, that's not going to happen. And the women were like, oh, yeah? Watch us. And they proceeded to uncrate his tea in front of him, measure it out in 1 pound increments, and walked out of the store. But they didn't pay him. They sold the tea themselves and gave the money to Revolutionary County committees. In Beverly, Massachusetts in 1777, when a local merchant would not accept the country's new paper money for his sugar, a group of about 60 women wearing lambskin cloaks with riding hoods, little lamb riding hoods, marched down to the wharves. Some of them were driving ox carts. One of them had a musket. They go directly to where the sugar was being kept. A foreman locked the gates. Not to be deterred, they called a bunch of men with axes who happily chopped the gate open. The women then grabbed the foreman by the hair, which turned out to be a wig. So he wiggled out from his hairpiece and locked his bald self in the nearby counting room. The women then helped themselves to 2 hogsheads of sugar. Once the sugar was in the carts, the merchants of town ran in to negotiate. And by the end of it, everybody in Beverly was taking paper money. No word on the foreman's wig. And what started me down this rabbit hole was a letter from Abigail Adams to John Adams on July 31st, 1777. Here's a few excerpts. You must know that there is a great scarcity of sugar and coffee, articles which the female part of the state are very loath to give up, especially whilst they consider the scarcity occasioned by the merchants having secreted a large quantity. There has been much rout and noise in the town for several weeks. It was rumored that an eminent, wealthy, stingy merchant named Thomas Boylston, who is a bachelor, had a hogshead of coffee in his store, which he refused to sell to the committee under 6 shillings per pound. A number of females, some say 100, some say more, assembled with a cart and trucks, marched down to the warehouse and demanded the keys, which he refused to deliver. Upon which one of them seized him by his neck and tossed him into the cart. Upon him finding no quarter, he delivered the keys. When they tipped up the cart and discharged him, then opened the warehouse, hoisted out the coffee themselves, put it onto the trucks, and drove off. It was reported that he had a spanking among them, but this, I believe, was not true. A large concourse of men stood amazed, silent spectators of the whole transaction. Side note. Their grandson, Charles Francis Adams, printed the letters 5 times at least, from about 1840 to 1876. And every time he printed that particular letter, he changed the text to, quote, it was reported that he had personal chastisement among them. I'm sorry, but I just love that 19th century modesty. Or possibly that Charles couldn't stand to hear his grandparents talk about spanking. These were not the only food-based riots during the Revolution. Many times men got involved in the protests, and many times in that case it got closer to bad rioting. But in almost every case, even the more tumultuous ones, the goal was not to shut the stores down or to destroy them, but to make the storekeepers charge the agreed-upon prices of the day. And this was young America finding its way with protest and free speech even before they officially had such a thing. It was not perfect, but it was much more to the point when the women were in charge. They were assertive. They were doing it for themselves, standing on their own 2 feet, ringing on their own bell.
Thank you, I'll get it myself.
Sorry. And that is just some of the ladies' food riots of the Revolution. Have you heard of any of these? Or have you heard of others? Please let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to hit the thumbs up button, the subscribe button, the bell button, all so that you get notifications when more videos come out and more people will know the videos are here. And remember, if you learn from history, you can make better history.